I was working for a very reputable firm in Brighton, out of law school. Ed was in the prosecutor's office as an assistant prosecutor, and I did a lot of criminal defense work back in that day, and we would bump into each other. We got to talking over lunch, and it was like, I'm really busy. I could use some help. And he was interested in getting into the private practice. The firm he was with was a lot like the firm that I had been with previously. It was time to move on. And we gave it a shot like 35 years ago.
I'll steal one of your lines that you say to me all the time. All these years, we've never really had a cross word.
No,
There's never been an argument. We've disagreed on things, usually when John's wrong. But we've never really had crosswords. We've never had an argument.
we have big egos. There's no doubt. Ed and I have big egos, but when it comes to working together in the practice, we really don't have a problem working together. And it's been a long time. It's been a good, and as your line would say, you know what? It's been over 35 years, and there were a couple of good years in there. We just can't agree on which ones.
I don't remember the years, which ones they were. No, I don't. But there was a couple.
There are a couple. We're in a small county, and when Ed and I first started, it was much smaller in terms of number of lawyers and residents. And through the years, because we were involved with sports activities, coaching for our children, and attending school functions, Ed was on the school board at one point, we get to know everybody. And when I graduated law school, I had an offer from a big firm in Lansing where I would have been a cog in a machine, is how I would have felt like it. And I had clerked for this firm locally, and I really found that I enjoyed the client contact, where you sit down with somebody who's coming in with maybe the worst time in their life, whether it's a domestic matter, whether it's a criminal matter, people suing each other, and you get a one-on-one and you get to help them. And I knew that I couldn't get that in a big firm where I'm representing big corporations and just churning out billable hours. And I found out, and it's still why I'm doing it as long as I've been, is that I really like working with the clients. There are some more difficult than others, but there's nothing more satisfying than when a client leaves and is just happy with your representation, regardless of what that outcome might be. Not everything we do is litigation. We do other things. It's estate planning, and we do business transactions. And again, it's that client contact. How can you make them comfortable with what they're asking you to do?
When both Matts came, candidly, it was nerve-wracking
Yeah, very much so.
at first. I don't know what the appropriate analogy would be, but you put your kid on a bike and put a helmet on him and hope for the best. And that's pretty much what you do here. It's nerve-wracking. Can't follow him around like he's a child anymore. He's on his own. The good news is he's acquired quite a high skill level in a very short period of time. As to Matt Harris, the same thing. It was nerve-wracking. He was my partner's son, still is, and it was nerve-wracking to watch and just to make sure that everything was going well. And he was the whole point is representing the clients adequately. And these guys did an amazing job very quickly, I might add. The learning curve was very brief.
Well, it made, yeah, me and Matt probably did pick it up quicker than most, but that's because right down the hallway, we have these two guys who've been doing this forever and who are the two of the most respected people in the county doing this. And so in those particularly the first number of years where you really don't know what you're doing, being able to ask somebody, two people that have been doing this forever and have been very, very good at it, it allows you to ramp up very, very quickly as opposed to just kind of learning it on your own. I mean, I learned everything from these two guys, and that's why I was able to pick it up as quickly as I did.
Especially having a mentor that also has your interests in the forefront, as opposed to a traditional employer. They could find some sort of vulnerability in you taking the forefront or overshining them in some fashion, but neither Matt nor I had any of those issues. Our fathers wanted us to be even better than they were and taught us everything that they could to put us in the best position to continue their legacy. There's not been a moment in my life in this very small community where I didn't meet somebody and they probably already had an idea of who I was. And that's because of what they built. Quite frankly, I'll use my father's word. It's nerve-wracking to some extent. These are people's most intimate issues that we're helping deal with, and we've got to help them through the most difficult times, and we've got to do it tastefully, ethically, and I believe we've learned from the two best, most sincere advocates of this community.
Well, Matt will come in and run something by me, and we'll talk it through. But during the conversation, what often will come up is, in a very polite way, we don't do it like that anymore, Dad. That we don't. That's just not how we do it anymore. He doesn't say it quite that literally. Occasionally, he'll say, "Well, why don't I just file that for you?" But yes, I'm sure he's learned from me. At least I hope he has, and I can tell you for sure I've learned from him.
And I've been very proud of both of these individuals. Ed and I have developed our own reputations individually and as a firm. They're going to develop their own reputations individually and what the firm will sound like as Ed and I disappear. And so they're off to a good start. They're very fortunate because we're able to help them because we have 45 years worth of experience. So when they don't know what they're doing or have questions, they come in and talk to us. What's interesting is that they're coming in and talking to us now, and it's kind of like, oh, I'm learning things because they've now been around for a while. And it's interesting because their perspective is different, but is now based on experience, and it's really quite entertaining.
The one thing that I think John and I were in agreement. I know we were in agreement on, which attracted us as partners, was we both have, at least I know we do. We have high ethics, and we tell the clients the absolute truth. If the client's case is going south, you tell them. You don't let them get disappointed later because they're spending a lot of money on us and they want results. And if we can't get them the results, we need to tell them that and ethically, and it would also save them some money. The point I'm leading up to, though, is I don't know as though you can teach that. Maybe as you rear a child, you can, as we, John and I have done here. But I was so pleased early on. I learned with Matt Harris and with my son, we didn't have to preach that. They were very ethical when they began practicing and still are. And that's, if not the most important thing in our firm, it's certainly very to the top. I think it is the most important thing.
The most crucial thing that the both of you taught, Matt and I, was just to be straightforward with these people. These problems are significant, and if they start this journey with an unreasonable expectation, there's no way to really correct that. It's their children or their liberties we're dealing with. And so the rules that you guys have always taught us as our foundation, tell the client the truth, even if it's difficult. Call them back, even if it's difficult to tell them what you need to tell them. And don't sell them some sort of dream just as a financial gain. These are people's entire lives. It was never about the money when we started. It was always about figuring out how do we get the client's interest served.
Well, you've told me the attorney that he worked for originally when he left the prosecutor's office is something that he had told Ed that I have remembered since day one, and I've tried to pass on to my son. And that was when you come back from court, because we are generally a litigation firm. The attorney wasn't asking, did you win or lose? It was, how did the client feel about your efforts? Because you can't always control a result, but you can control the relationship with the client and the effort you put into it. And I've never forgotten that, because that, at the end of the day, is what you're trying to do, is you're trying to keep the client happy in the most difficult times in their lives. And it's often difficult to do that. And winning and losing is important for us egotistically, and it is for the clients. But at the end of the day, you're only as good as the facts that you're given. And so I've always remembered, how do the clients react to what you have done for them?
I've been coming back from court for, it was 15 years. Come back from court and he'll say, how'd it go? And then the initial follow-up question every time was, well, how did your client feel? And because sometimes you'll get a bad result, but your client's like, you did wonderful. And that's the most important thing, is if your client feels like you are there with them and that you care and you're advocating for them, that's the most important thing. Because the results are going to come and go, but your client really needs to feel like you care and that you're on their side and that you really are advocating for them.
Well, and one of the things, not to sound too syrupy, but is we do care. And I came back from court a couple of weeks ago, and it's a weekend, and I came in on a Monday, and I sat down, and I said to John, I said, this judge's ruling bothered me all weekend, and it shouldn't. And John's response was, and I was very happy to hear it, is that's because you care. And I didn't think that's why I was upset all weekend. I wasn't upset to the point where it's ruining my weekend, but it was on my mind. It was weighing on my mind. And I was really happy to hear John's response, because it made me feel better. And I wasn't just upset because I lost. I was upset because the client lost. And we're all they have. And if we have dropped the ball, and we don't, you can't sleep. You can't, I mean, the whole thing is, I have to know at the end of the day that I've done my best for every client. And like John said earlier, regardless of the results, if I know I did my best, that's all I can ask of myself. And I think the clients know that. I do. I think they can sense that we're not in it for the buck. I mean, of course, it's our livelihoods. But I think the thing that we're all very fortunate to have is we all really want to take good care of our clients.